Hello, everybody. Welcome to call number 8. This really is call number 8 of Village in the City. And I'm Mark McCurgo. I'm leading the project, and our aim is to help and encourage people to build micro-local communities wherever they are in the world. A few may only be a few streets or a few blocks, but part of the post-pandemic recovery can be to engage and build on the engagement we're already seeing with local communities and encourage people to do small things to improve their own lives and improve the lives of those around them. And Village in the City is building up a collection of resources, and we invite village builders to sign up with us. It doesn't cost anything to do that. And we have resources like a Village Builder's Handbook and other things that are developing at the moment. We've had a couple of new villages in the last week, the Miraflores area of La Paz, Bolivia, and also Prévost in Quebec in Canada near Montreal, both signed up in the last week, which is very exciting. So welcome to the project. And one of our things is to have calls every month with people with something to say about building useful micro-local communities. And I'm very excited to say that our guest today is Laura Puttkamer from the best named urban consultancy in the world, ParCityPatory, a wonderful name. And Laura's going to be speaking with us today about building participation, which is the thing that she does and the thing that she's got some very interesting ideas about. So Laura, welcome to the call. We're going to hear from Laura for about 20 minutes or so. There'll be a chance for questions, and then there'll be a short breakout room session for you to say hello to some other people on the call and talk about what we've been learning. So, Laura, over to you.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. So my name is Laura. I am from Germany originally. I'm currently sitting in the south of Mexico. Due to COVID, I decided to stay here for a little while. I've been working in Mexico City for the last 3 years. So I'm a consultant on participatory techniques in urban planning, but I come more from the social sciences. Yes, I've also got a degree in political science. So I come at the whole urban planning topic, not from a technical point of view, but more from a social point of view. So I try to be a bridge, between the urban planners and between communities. I blog about that. I also work as a journalist, trying to give communities, especially here in Mexico, more of a voice and kind of present some of the solutions they have here. So what I do is called solutions journalism. And I'm going to share my screen with you. Share. You should be seeing that, and I'll go to full screen. Hang on.
Just while you're doing that, Laura, I discovered something new about Zoom the other day, which is that you can vary the size of the gallery or the speaker picture and the slide picture in your screen. If you go to the top right and click on the view box, you should get some options about you want to see the speaker or the gallery alongside the slides. And then you can also, if you put your mouse somewhere near the edge of the slide picture, a line will appear and you can slide it to make the slides bigger or smaller and the gallery bigger or smaller. It's a useful dodge that when we have some slides, and I didn't know about it, so I'm sharing it now to encourage everyone to get the best view that you can given whatever screen you have. Thanks, Laura. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mark. I'll jump right in. Hang on. Okay, we did the icebreaker question and questions. I did have a look of the chat. I want to read more of it as well. So we've got people from all over the world, basically, from a lot of different professions, which is great. So in my presentation, I'm going to try and give you an overview of participatory planning, and I will give you some very hands-on techniques that you can hopefully use in your work or your interest as village builders. So I'll talk a little bit about the rationale for participatory planning and participatory techniques. I'll give you some tools. I also have included quite a few links to my blog and to other resources where you can learn more about the techniques, because in 20 to 25 minutes we can't go through all of them, sadly, but I will also give you some examples to kind of illustrate what I'm talking about. And in the end, I do have some discussion questions for you, but before that, I am also very happy to take your questions. So participatory planning is the ultimate grassroots approach. The idea is that those who live in a neighborhood actually get to decide how their urban environment, or their more rural environment in some cases, will look like, rather than a top-down approach where the urban planners come in and go, like this neighborhood should have more parking, for example. The idea is to have a bottom-up movement where actually the citizens themselves co-create and co-design this whole process. And that requires quite a bit of rethinking in the urban planning process, because that traditionally tends to be very top-down. Plus it's also always sadly restricted by funds. So one of the pioneers for this idea of community engagement in planning is Jane Jacobs. You might have heard of her. She was a US-American journalist, and she became an activist when in New York City they were planning on building a big motorway through her neighborhood. And that's how she became active. And then afterwards, she wrote some very famous books, including The Death and Life of Great American Cities. And in this book, she said, cities have the capabilities of providing something for everybody, but only because and only when they are created by everybody. So that's kind of the main idea behind participatory planning. And recently that has been picked up by international organizations as well. So it's becoming more mainstream. The United Nations have their Sustainable Development Goals. That's an agenda that they try to reach, or that all of the countries who are part of the United Nations are going to try to reach by 2030, which is very ambitious. And the goal number 11 is exclusively about sustainable cities and communities. And as one of their targets, they say, which I marked in yellow here, that they want to, or we all are supposed to work towards inclusive and sustainable urbanization and more capacity for participatory planning and management in all countries. And then also there's the new urban agenda, which is by UN Habitat. So that's the body of the United Nations that's responsible for cities and human settlements. And in this new urban agenda that they came up with in Quito in Ecuador during this big conference in 2016, they also put a big focus on participatory civic engagement. So that's kind of to give you a bit of a background. So this is not just an idea, it's becoming part of international policies. And another important idea playing into that, and that's maybe even a bit more radical, is the right to the city, which is a concept from 1968. It comes from Henri Lefebvre, French. And for the first time in 2016, this right to the city, which is the right to live, to work, and to play in the city, was included in an international document, which was the new urban agenda that I mentioned just in the slide before. So participating in urban planning is also living and implementing your right to the city. So it's not just a right to be a citizen of a city, it's a right to co-create the city and to actually be a big part of the city. This idea is particularly strong in Latin American countries, but it's taking a hold in many other countries as well. And it's part of the whole underlying rationale for also the work that Village in the City does. So to further go into some basics of building participation and engagement in urban projects, key here is this ladder of citizen participation. I like using that. It's a very good illustration of how to participate. So the idea is that participation is often used as a token, right? You've got urban planners or you've got municipal governments saying, this is part of our participatory strategy, but in many cases, it might be just a small survey. And then what happens to the survey results is usually quite unclear. It's not the actual citizen control, which are the top 3 rungs of this ladder you can see. It's more towards maybe in the area of tokenism. So it might be consultation, that means consulting the citizens, but not necessarily implementing what they say. Placating them by having maybe even a town hall event, but then not following through on the ideas of the citizens. Whereas an example for true citizen control would be participatory budgeting. They're doing that quite a bit in New York City, for example, but also this is taking hold in many other cities. So there the idea is that citizens actually get to decide how to distribute the budget in their neighborhood or in their municipality, and that effectively gives them a lot of control, much more obviously than they would have if they only participated in a survey. And yeah, in order to include neighbors in the planning process, or maybe in the initiatives that you as Village in the City members are planning on doing, I think it's important to keep this ladder of citizen participation in mind. You cannot always reach the top rungs, I think, but at least be aware of where you are at the moment, where are you yourself, and where are the people that you work with on this ladder. And then also, if you think of a participatory technique you are using, where do you think the results of that are based on this ladder? So we've got a small poll here, and I would like to ask you to just tell me, where do you see yourself on this ladder of citizen participation? And there I would like to consider you yourself as citizens in the neighborhoods you live in. So this is not so much about your work, it's more about how you feel, how much you can participate. So if you just click, you should have a pop-up window of this poll. I'll give you 1 or 2 minutes. What I'm seeing a lot here in Mexico, for example, is non-participation and tokenism. Sadly, even though this right to the city is so strong, but then you've got a lot of corruption, and you know that citizens tend to not trust in that. 82% of you already voted. Thank you. That's great participation.
Okay, so so we've nearly everyone has voted. Just going 5 more seconds, and I will share the results, which are a good mixture, actually. Okay. Yes. There we are.
Thank you, Mark.
So can you see the results now? Yes.
Yes, perfect. So it looks like a few of you see yourself in the, no, but not many. Most of you see yourself in the tokenism area, but there's also quite a bit of citizen control, partnership, delegation, and actual true citizen control with only one of you. Consultation, sadly, is the winner, although it's much better than nothing, right? But I'm just telling you this so that you're aware of the fact that consultation is more tokenism than actual participation, although it might be branded as participatory techniques, and it might help governments to reach certain political goals. But in terms of, co-creating and giving controls to the citizens, that's somewhere around the middle of the ladder, or maybe even the bottom third. Okay, thank you very much for participating in this.
Maybe later on we can invite the person who clicked to the top level, citizen control, to share that maybe in a few minutes' time. Anyway.
Yes, that's a great idea. So actually, if that person would be willing to speak, we'll come back to you. So in order to climb the rungs of this ladder and to get further and further towards actual community engagement, there's a few different tools, and this is where I put so many links. But one of them is participatory mapping. So if, for example, you in your neighborhood want to lobby for a new playground for children, or new flower pots, or whatever you might like with your neighborhood, or maybe even the opportunity to do participatory budgeting, these are some of the techniques you can use for, let's say, urban planning related things. Participatory mapping is usually a very good tool. You can see an example of that on the left. This is not about creating an accurate map. It's more about gauging what the citizens might want, where priorities lie, and also what the neighborhood looks like in their minds. So this might be also about, where do you feel safe, where do you feel less safe, and then looking at where women feel more safe, where young people feel more safe or less safe. So these are just some examples, but it's also, I think, a very fun and engaging activity, and a good way to include a lot of neighbors. You could, for example, do some kind of pop-up stall just on one street or in a central space in the neighborhood, and then quickly have people who might just be passing by participate in that. And then always also tell them what's going to happen to their votes or to their participation, what the results that you expect might be. Another idea are transect walks, and just based on my blog, because I can see, the analytics and statistics of how many people visit which website of my blog. This is apparently the most popular method, that just by the way. So this actually consists in you getting together a group of neighbors, ideally a very mixed group, different backgrounds, different ages, and just walk through the neighborhood quietly for however long it takes, maybe about half an hour. And then afterwards, share your impressions, possibly draw a map as well, and kind of try to get the neighbors to engage and to discuss in what did they notice in the neighborhood, where would they like to see improvements, which parts did they like, where did they feel safe. And this is usually quite interesting also if you consider things like sound and smells, because these are other senses that you employ if you walk together but silently. So you might notice quite a few different things, which in turn might lead to some improvement ideas or some initiatives. What you can also do is distribute cameras, or maybe even just ask people to use their smartphone cameras and then take pictures of the neighborhood. So you could instruct them, for example, with questions like, take a picture of a place you do not like, take a picture of your favorite place, and take a picture of maybe even another neighborhood, and a good example of something you would like to have in your neighborhood. This could be a very nice exhibition at some point. It can be some online project, or even used on social media to show what neighbors in your neighborhood seem to want. So ideally, the more neighbors participate, the broader your picture gets, of course. Some other tools would be playing with Lego bricks, which is most popular with adults usually, to kind of build new ideas and just visualize and play around. Use chalk. I've done this in a few projects, just on the streets or maybe on some walls, which is another way of engaging even people who just pass by, who don't have a lot of time. But to draw something, to write something, if you give them a little prompt, that usually works pretty well. You can use whiteboards. There's a lot of opportunities that have come up in the last year, pretty much, in terms of virtual participation. That's also something to look into that holds a lot of potential. And then I've just put a link in here on some more ways to improve your city. So feel free to have a look at that afterwards. There's a lot more techniques. These are just a few that I personally like to work with and that work, but in the end, everyone has their own kind of toolkit of techniques, and then it also depends on the neighbors and the communities. I'm going to give you a few examples. I tried to look at UK examples in particular. So I did my master's degree in Manchester about 4 or 5 years ago. And there's the neighborhood of Levenshulme that we worked in together with the neighborhood association. And we tried to find out how to go about upgrading or improving the neighborhood. But this project was at its very beginning. So we started with this participatory mapping process. As you see, we color coded it a little bit. We looked at crime rates, and then we looked at official statistics, but also at the more emotional connections that people had with certain corners or back streets. We looked at, as you can see in green, kind of the positive examples, positive spaces in the neighborhood, which were community centers and a farmer's market. And then also we looked at some hotspots and some other issues like low air quality, for example. And in the end, we recommended to do a community garden and to also work with community festivals to bring the neighborhood together a little bit more. And one more idea that I know in the UK, you have a lot of these back lanes between rows of housing, and these tend to be a bit neglected in many neighborhoods, especially in Manchester, I think. And at the same time, they provide an interesting opportunity to bring the community together. So you can try to upgrade them a little bit by doing a common gardening project, or by allowing pedestrians to pass through. Depends a lot on the neighborhood, but these are a few ideas that we worked together with the neighbors. We worked on together with the neighbors in Manchester in that case. This is another project that I was not involved in, but I liked a lot. This was in Cork in Ireland, so the Shandon Street Renewal Project. And this is a great example of a true bottom-up movement, because their neighbors actually got together and they said, we do not like our streets anymore. These back streets in particular, they were deteriorating a lot. There was crime, there was graffiti. So based on volunteer work, they got together, they started this gardening. You can see the flower pots. They did some street art. And you might think that's more, it's more kind of a soothing measure more than anything, but in the end, it does change a lot. So it's not just pretty colors, it's not just flowers. It's actually an opportunity for the neighbors to get together, to get to know each other, and to include the youth as well, who in many cases are seen as potential, actually contribute to crime or as a potential danger. Work with all of these groups together. If you find some low threshold ways, such as street art, to bring them together, that usually changes quite a lot. And then ideally, if you can get funds, like here in Cork, they got funds from the Irish government and from the European Union, that helps with the sustainability and the long-term progress of a project. Then I've got one example from Mexico City, because I've been living there for the last few years. So their walkability is a big issue. Sidewalks are in a very sorry state in many cases. And that leads to a lot of problems, such as more and more use of cars and very low safety for pedestrians. But actually the government has been making it a priority to improve these pedestrian crossings. So in cooperation with several local artists, they've done this kind of colorful painting of zebra crossings, and they are also making them much bigger. So as you can see, it's not just a perpendicular crossing anymore. They actually looked at where people do cross in real life, because we tend to not just go by the lines, right? And so that's one of the biggest crossings in the city center. They made that much bigger, but in this case, it's a very nice example, but it's an example actually of tokenism, I would say, because this was not very participatory. It's something that the statistics show, and I agree, just based on my experience, people do need that. But if you cooperate with 1 or 2 local artists, that's very nice, but it's not a truly bottom-up project. And there the question is, do the citizens feel involved? Is that where they actually want funds to be spent? Or do they have much bigger issues or pressing worries, for example? And also, will they take ownership of this? Would they, make any improvements? Would they actually respect these new zebra crossings or not, because they were not involved in the decision process? So that's just something to think about. And that's it for my discussion. So sorry for my presentation. So if you've got some questions, go ahead. And then afterwards, I've got some discussion questions that can also serve as prompts for the breakout rooms we're going to do. But yeah, first of all, go ahead, ask me anything you would like.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you. Very, very interesting stuff there. I've got a question just to kick things off, and then no doubt other people will have as well. So many of us are coming to this quite new, and we're working with quite small patches and no budget to speak of. What have you got a kind of maybe an idea or two that can be done easily and cheaply with a small area that would just be a way of getting things off the ground or getting things moving in this respect?
Yes, there I would recommend doing something like in Cork. They took one small street, so this is not much longer than 20 meters. There was a lot of graffiti, and they just needed, in terms of the budget, they just needed the colors and the flower pots. So there you can work with donations or work with what you've got in your workshop. Maybe that's very easy. And then also using social media usually helps a lot. If you've got local Facebook groups or other groups, you can put out a call to action. And yet another thing is working with chalk that I mentioned. So if you've got a big wall, an empty wall somewhere in your neighborhood, you can write a prompt on it, and then maybe provide a box full of chalk sticks and hope that no one will steal them, but usually that works. But you could write a prompt like, I wish this place was ... Or if I got to decide, I would build ... here. And then you leave some space, and then hopefully within the space of maybe a week, a lot of passersby would write something, and there you've got your first, well, it's kind of a survey, right? But it's also bottom-up data that you can use for further initiatives.
Absolutely. Thank you. That's great. So I noticed that there are people sharing ideas in the chat, and I would invite you, if you want to share them out loud, please do. And also, please, who's got a question for Laura? I've got the gallery view on, so if you want to give me a wave, please do, or just unmute yourself and fire away. Adrian, hello. Hi. Another member of our advisory board. Lovely to see you, Adrian, from Berlin.
I'm very glad to be here. And I was, as Laura knows, maybe about these Stadtteilzentren, these neighborhood centers, quartier management. I'm just wondering about maybe your experience in Mexico with this type of arrangement. I think something that is important to remember is to use what's already there. And I'm wondering, what sort of role that plays in the work that you've been doing in the participatory sense.
Mm-hmm. I think especially in Mexico or even in African countries, for example, you usually have community leaders. And I think that's a stronger concept than it is in some European countries, but more towards the global south, you've got these people of eminent respect. And if you get them to work with you, that is usually very helpful. And then at the same time, you also have to, if you want to work with a local association or community center, so these that exist in Berlin, for example. I think before working together with them, you have to look at how is their reputation with the neighbors, because in a lot of cases, and I'm speaking of Mexico again, there's so much corruption going on. People would hate to work with any local councils. They would not trust in anything. But if you, for example, got a local council to do participatory budgeting, that would be a very important signal. And that might be something people get on board with, because there's examples from all over the world that actually works out. So this question of building trust is key. And sometimes it's much easier to build trust if you're an NGO and if you're not involved with the government, but it depends a lot on the local context.
Thank you, Adrian.
Yeah.
Who's next? Randy, and then Lynn.
I have a kind of a simple illustration. The picture behind me is from the summer here in Nebraska when we all gathered outside in our street. But now it's very cold, and we had a woman that was undergoing some medical examinations at another city, and we wanted to welcome her home. And ordinarily we would have been in the street when she drove down the street and cheered or something. But we decided to park our cars in the driveways facing the street. And as her husband let me know when she was about to come down our block, and we all flashed our lights at her. And it's just a simple little thing, but it's a way of connecting and showing you care. So.
It's a beautiful example, Randy. I agree. Usually it's very small thing. You don't need a big budget for any of the participatory method.
Our neighborhood get-together started with an example from Spain where they were stepping outside at 8 o'clock at night to applaud the medical workers. And that's how we got started. And now we've turned into a real interesting little village project here.
And what you also did, and what I can recommend thinking about, is using different senses. So you did not work with kind of talking to this woman in your case, you worked with lights, right? And then in Spain, they worked with the sound, the clapping. I know there has been a lot of musical projects during the COVID pandemic. So that's just a bit of a different way to flip a switch and think about these techniques in a bit of a different way. What else could you do? Or could you cook, for example,
Yeah, we bought her a giant cookie.
Amazing.
So Laura, I wonder if you could stop sharing your slides just right now, so everyone can see each other a little better. Thank you very much. So Lynn, did you have a question?
I was actually scratching my head, but I'm not so much a question. I found the ladder very thought-provoking. I've been fairly recently appointed into the role as Compassionate Communities Lead with our local hospice. And the aim really there is to engage at the grassroots level and to almost bring into visible awareness what's already happening, the recognition that compassion already exists. But very often, and I think even hospice isn't immune from this, we've professionalized the art of dying so that people have almost lost connection with the very natural process of death, dying, grief and loss. And the hospice, I think, has been quite revolutionary in its intention to break down that wall and has really enabled us to begin engaging at the community level, not to come into communities and do the hospice thing in the community, but to actually find out from the communities, what do you already do that looks like compassion, and how can we help you do that? So I'm just finding it very inspiring to be part of a platform of people with very different agendas, but this kind of grassroots approach to collaboration and engagement. And as a clinician for 17 years, it's been quite a paradigm shift for me to actually come down to the level of the neighbor and find out, where are your strengths, where are your gifts, and how can we help you monopolize those? And maybe we'll meet in the middle somewhere. We're in the process of putting together a compassionate neighbors project so that people scattered across our catchment area can get a bit of light touch training and then go back into their streets and have the confidence to have difficult conversations. So that's kind of where I'm coming from, and that's why I'm here.
Great, thank you very much, Lynn. Questions? Richard,
Yeah, I was going to make a comment that if you want to start making these connections, it's nice to have some kind of event or celebration or activity that you're thinking of, and your activity could be as simple as let's make a little flower bed or clean up the local park, but anything that gives you an excuse to go and talk to people about the thing you're going to do. That often, if someone asked about working with local government, and I would say yes, but often the way the government works is at such a different pace as you want to work, that if you start talking to your local councillors, they'll say, yeah, we can put that on the 2022 agenda, and you lose momentum. So talk to the local government, but if you can find any kind of simple activity that's doable and just talk to people about doing it, that can be a way of building community, because then you find the people in your local community who want to work with you. And if you're just by yourself, it's tricky. Once you've found one other person, then you don't feel like you're the lone nut. You start being a team, and that's very important for your own internal motivation.
Exactly, Richard. And if I may jump in also about the question from Titus, about advice and experience of getting local authorities or powers to support local participation. So Richard, you already spoke to that a little bit. I would like to add that I would really recommend trying to get some kind of data in order to convince local authorities. These can be self-drawn maps, they can be surveys, they can be, existing maps, and you put little colorful stickers on certain areas. But if you can show them that there's actually a number of neighbors behind you, that will be quite helpful. And then I just wanted to share the term tactical urbanism with you. So these are kind of pop-up interventions and other interventions along the lines we've been speaking about. It can be as simple as a flower bed or just painting a big graffiti together with all, like a street art, a work of art or graffiti with all of the neighbors. But with tactical urbanism, you've got the idea of a long-term change that you want to achieve. And that's something where you can easily involve the neighbors in. And again, you would act as some kind of bridge between the neighbors and the local government, for example. And by showing the local government the changes that you can achieve by doing something very small and cheap, such as a flower bed, for example, you have a very good starting position, and you've got this tactic, of showing them that in the long term, if they gave you some funds to create 5 more flower beds, this kind of change would happen. If you've got the data to convince them, that will help a lot.
Thanks, Laura. I see Adrian wants to come back in, but let me just sort of check around to see if there's anyone. I think he's had a go already. So anyone else? No, come on, Adrian. Go for it.
I just wanted to add to that and maybe qualify it a little bit with my comment before. I think there's a lot of informational plans that are already out there that might be at a sub-local level, that it might be in the local council, or as I said before, the local neighbourhood group. And yeah, sorry, my daughter's now screaming in the background because someone kept her outside. Lockdown. The point there is that I would. Sorry, why wouldn't I open the door? Obviously, that there is those plans are there often and covered, or they're not known about because not that many people, make the effort to go directly to perhaps a representative of your neighbourhood, and that representative might also not be sort of proactively going out into the community, and they're stuck in their comfort zone a little bit or whatever. And I've had that experience before where we were doing a school safety, local safety initiative, way to school, local safety initiative, and there were maps out there, and we were sort of going to do a similar project without knowing that those maps were already there, or that those activities are already being done. So just it's part of the process, I guess, that sometimes gets overlooked. And I think that it's just with the manifesto of the solution focus, see what's already existing and see what you can hook into and use, and sort of, if it's already written on paper, then you've got a great chance of, you're talking about participatory budgeting. Is it a priority? Why is it sort of not, or whatever? So sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to add that too.
Perfect. And as a journalist, I would also add that try to get the media on board. If there's a local paper or maybe a blog in the area, or if you try Facebook groups, for example, that will help and give you a lot of leverage with the government as well.
Thank you, Laura. we had somebody voted themselves at 8 on the ladder of participation. I'm wondering if that person might care to unmute and share what that experience was about and tell us a little bit about it. That would be lovely. Who was it?
Well, Mark, it was me.
Okay, there.
It was me. I was trying to remember what 8 was. I actually started with this idea that whatever we do here in our little neighborhood, we do on our own. Cooperating, what we're doing is actually very small scale. And doing it on our own without asking permission or without letting know or without letting know the local authorities is possible. It is not against the law. We are not infringing anybody's rights. We are not trespassing. So my determination is a strong word, but I thought whatever we do it on our own. What is interesting, only the other day, we had a disagreement, an argument possibly. We are going to do notices on the name tablets of the streets, where the name of the street comes from, and if it is a person, what this person did or has done, so that to become the name of a street. And we had a dispute, we had an argument, because the person who volunteered to take the project from A to Z, she said, I will write to the local authorities for permission to put the street signs. And I thought, what's the point? Our neighborhood is so far from any center of the city. And if we ask the local authorities, it will take ages. And probably they will say no. I don't know, but it will, for sure, it will take ages. So whatever we do in the near future, I think we want to do it on our own. This is why I put 8. It was easy because we're very small scale.
Yes. Well, thank you. Leah is in Sofia in Bulgaria, everyone, and thank you. I mean, I love this idea of just doing small things without anyone's permission. You don't need permission to do small things in your own neighborhood, and there's all sorts of levels we can work on. And I see in the chat that Laura has shared also the term guerrilla urbanism, which I must go and look up. That sounds very appealing to me. So thank you very much, Leah. Thank you, everybody. So we've got about 19 minutes left on the call. So let's take the chance to jump into some breakout room sessions. They're random. There's going to be four or so people per room. Say hello to everyone. Talk about where you are. Talk about what's interesting and inspiring about today's session, things you're thinking about doing. Share your experiences. And make sure everyone has a chance to speak, please, in the rooms. So I'm just going to create the rooms now, and I'll close them in 10 minutes time, and we'll have a final reflection together before we end the call on the hour. So I'm opening up the rooms. Please jump in, say hello to the people there, and have a good 10-minute chat. So welcome back, everybody. Everyone's rejoining the body of the kirk, as we say up here in Scotland. And we have a chance for any reflections, things that have emerged in the conversations that anyone would like to share before we talk about next steps and winding up for today. So give me a wave or just unmute yourself and have a shout. Laura.
Yeah, I just spoke a bit about transition streets in my group, and I've popped the link to the transition streets website in the chat in case anyone's interested. What's very helpful is that you can download the transition streets workshop, workbook for free from their website, and so we use that to provide some structure for our meetings. And we met every week, every 2 weeks. For 7 sessions and worked our way through the workbook, and we enjoyed it so much, and we were getting so much out of it that we didn't want to stop meeting. So we've continued to meet fortnightly beyond the workbook, and we now pick our own topics to discuss. But the whole idea behind that is strengthening your connections with your neighbours, but also making changes to your own lifestyle to lessen your impact on the environment. And it's amazing how motivating it is to make those changes when you're part of a small group. The other thing that we're doing at the moment in our neighbourhood, which has been really nice as well, this month, for the month of February, this grew out of the Transition Streets group, is we're doing a thing called Fix It Feb. And so for the month of February, we're inviting all of our neighbours to think about things about the house that need fixed or repaired or maintained, and to reach out to their neighbours to ask for know-how, to share skills, and also to do a bit of tool sharing as well. So it's been wonderful to see what things our neighbours have fixed, and also for them to ask other neighbours for help. We've had bicycles fixed, toasters fixed, toilet seats fixed, and it's all on the back of this initiative that has been really primarily been online as well. So it's a good one to do while there's COVID restrictions too. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Great stuff there. Tool sharing, wonderful idea. Resource sharing, very good. Other thoughts? Anyone before we wind up?
What stood out for me is how many ideas come from talking.
Yes, absolutely. So talking is creativity writ large, I think, particularly if you come at it with the right spirit. Thank you, Kate. Yeah. So Laura, you have a couple more slides to share with us, I think.
I actually did have some discussion questions, but I think they're not necessary because there was a lot of lovely and lively discussion going on. It's in the PowerPoint, so It will just be sent to you so you can have a look and think about it later if you'd like. And I've got one more slide to share, so I will quickly share my screen again, because I wanted to invite you to my Urbanism book club. Me from current slide. There we go. So I run this book club, and that's also just yet one more source of inspiration. So for example, last month we were reading Happy City, which is one of the Bibles of urbanism, let's say. And then this month we're reading Cities for People by Jan Gehl, the Danish architect who has transformed Copenhagen's city center and who's all about cycling and walking in cities. So join us, we discuss on Instagram, and also there's a newsletter and some more opportunities for participation on my blog. The two links will also be sent to you in the PowerPoint. And we're always happy to welcome more members there, and just for you to get some more ideas. You'll get the discussion questions, and also to let you know, I'll include some links for further reading in the PowerPoint as well. And then I just wanted to thank you very much for having me and for listening and for discussing in such a lively way.
Thank you very much indeed, Laura. That's been absolutely super. Thank you. And so many resources to follow up there, everyone. So everyone will get the chat, and there'll be a link to the recording of this call as well, sent out to you. And I'd recommend the Urbanism Book Club. I've been, although I haven't joined in the discussions very much, I've been reading the books, or at least getting the books, and hoping that the knowledge somehow permeates me by osmosis. There's a nice big pile of them over here. But it's well worth joining in with, and you get some top tips. And I've heard the name Jan Gehl 3 times this week, so this is a sign that I really must investigate more about that. So thank you, Laura. A bit of information about what's happening next in the project. Anyone is welcome to join us as a village builder. You don't need anyone else even to be with you. You can just want to do something in your own area, and you can do that by going to the Put Your Village on the Map page, link in the chat, and you can see there the villages that are already on the map. It's free to join, and that gets you access to these calls, of course, which are free anyway, but also our learning and sharing calls, and our Facebook group, which are for comparing notes and sharing challenges and other things. There's recordings of all our previous calls on the resources page, where you can also find the handbook and other resources that are appearing. And our next event is in 5 weeks' time, Wednesday, the 17th of March, with Delia Swart from Protection Approaches. And Delia, I'm just looking around. Delia, would you like to just say a little tiny word about what you're going to say? Delia, is that okay? I know that's coming a bit suddenly at you.
No worries, I don't mind. Hi everyone, I'm Delia. I work for a charity in London called Protection Approaches, and we work on preventing all forms of identity-based violence. So we do hate crime prevention work and genocide prevention work and everything in between. So we work on a lot of different issues, and a core part of our work is community building. So I'll be sharing a little bit about our community building work, kind of how we think about what strong and resilient communities look like, and how we help different community activists around London build community. So it's a bit about what to expect. I hope to see you guys there. It was lovely to join you today.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us today, Delia. And the link to book for that call is in the chat. As usual, it's free on Eventbrite, and do join there to join us then. So thank you so much to Laura. Thank you to everyone for coming. Great turnout today. And we're coming to the end of the call. I'm very happy to sit here and have a chat with anyone about anything. But if you need to go, this is the time to go. And if anyone wants to stay and hang around and ask questions or have a chat about community building and the Village in the City project, then please do. Thanks, everyone. Cheers for now. Bye.
I better go.